Hello and welcome to Sonder. My name is Maggie. I am a knitter, sewist, crafter, bibliophile, and doctor living here in Denver, Colorado. How is everyone? It is a very, very hot and very sunny day in late July. It is Friday, July 30th, and it is like 100 degrees Fahrenheit outside right now. It is so hot. And so I am really enjoying wearing my Wallin dress. So this is a dress that I made by Paradise Patterns out of this really beautiful cotton voile that I got at Fancy Tiger Crafts. And this dress is the best for a hot summer day, which I learned last weekend when I went to a wedding. So last weekend I had the great joy of going to my first big event after COVID, or I mean, it's still kind of going on, but it's neither here nor there. Anyway, I got to go to a wedding of one of my best friends from college and see and dance and play with so many of my friends from college who are just the most amazing people. I feel like everybody thinks that their friend group is amazing and that's why we're friends with them, but man, I feel as though when I was in college I really did cultivate these beautiful, beautiful friendships with people from all over the country, all over the world, and it's so fun that we live so close to each other still. I think that's the thing that's really beautiful about my friends from college, is that all of us stayed very close to where we went to college. So I went to the University of Colorado up in Boulder, Colorado, so that's only about 45 minutes north of where I live now, and most of my friends still live in this area, and so we get to get together pretty frequently, but this was the very first time that we got to come together and celebrate love, and it was a blast. I absolutely loved it. I went to bed way too late, and it made this week a little bit brutal, but it was just, I don't know, I think that it was the first time that I myself have felt this sense of closure with the pandemic and felt like things were at least beginning to come back to normal, and it was just beautiful. I don't think there's any other word for it. It was just a beautiful experience, and we were lucky enough, we're lucky enough in the United States to have a lot of vaccines, and all of my friends obviously believe in science, and so all of them are vaccinated, and it was so fun to be able to go somewhere and feel safe and feel comfortable about dancing with people and just sharing in joy and merriment. We haven't gotten to do that, which is crazy. It's something that we normally do so frequently, and having celebrations and these moments in your life that are so powerful and being able to share those moments with others is so, so important to us as human beings who are these creatures that live together. And so it's just been really, really beautiful to be able to share that time with friends. So I wore my Wallin dress at the wedding, and it was very nice because obviously it was very hot. And this dress is just so comfortable because it does have the low back, which I will show some footage of me wearing this, but just so you can get a sense of what the dress looks like. But it has a very low back and a very loose fitting dress, and so it's just incredibly comfortable to wear during the summer months when it's really hot, and you know, here in Denver it's hot and dry, and it just feels very flowy and very freeing. And so it's been really, really beautiful and something that I found myself reaching to. It does feel a little bit more dressy. I feel a little bit strange sitting here talking to a computer, or talking to my phone rather, and wearing it in my dining room, but I can get fancy. So yeah, that was really beautiful. And other than that, I've really just been doing a lot of working. So I just finished a month in which I was working 24 to 28 hour shifts every 4 days. And then the rest of the shifts I was working 12-hour days. So it was a lot of work this this month, but so much joy. I got to meet so many amazing people. One of my favorite patients that I've ever met in the entire world, I met this month, and oh, I wish I could share more about him because he is such a magical human being. He's 2.5 and he is perfect. I'm obsessed with him, and I obviously can't share anything else, but it's just so fun to be able to connect and bring joy. And we actually, when he left, he's someone who was in the hospital for most of the month that I was working. And so I got to see him every day. And when he left, the residents and I chipped in and bought him a little plush toy. And I actually drew this card for him. Obviously it was a picture of a bear, and it was from the retirement section of the card stand down in the hospital. And so it's a bear that just says, "We'll miss you," and it's like waving, but I drew on his trach and his trilogy ventilator and his little G-tube. And so it was really fun to get to connect with this little guy. And I've learned so much sign language, as I was talking about. And the thing about peds is just that they are so silly, so goofy, so funny. Even if they're going through something hard, they just want to play and love and laugh. And it brings me so much joy to be able to spend time with the kids and learn from them and grow with them and laugh with them. They're just so, so sweet. So that was wonderful. And that's all I've been doing. I've just been going to a wedding and working a lot. My mom and stepdad came for a very quick visit because they were going to some doctor's appointments down in Denver, and we grew up in Steamboat, and so they came down for a quick visit, and it was really, really wonderful to be able to see them again. I haven't seen them for a couple of months, so that was really beautiful. And yeah, now I'm just taking some sips on some homemade kombucha. So I think I brought up the kombucha that me and my husband make. We have a SCOBY that we've had for quite a while, and this flavor is actually cherry and chamomile. So I put in, I wanted to bring this up because it's one of the most beautiful presents I've ever gotten, but my family for Christmas, our tradition is to hand make things or hand forage things for people for Christmas. And so last year, my stepdad grew some chamomile in his garden, and he doesn't even like chamomile, but he knows that I really love it. And so he grew chamomile and went out every morning as it was blooming and picked the chamomile buds and dried them out for me in the sun and made me this really beautiful chamomile tea, which I actually just learned is not tea, or maybe it is tea. I'm unsure, but I was watching Kat from the Heather and Hops podcast and her husband. They were talking about Alex's job, which is like roasting and processing tea. And it was so fascinating to learn about tea. And I honestly had no idea that all of the tea in the world comes from essentially one kind of plant that's just processed in different ways. Mind blown. I don't know why, but I think I figured that it was kind of like grapes, where you make wine and process the grapes in different ways, but it's also different kinds of grapes. I just figured it was something like that because that shows how much I know about tea. It's almost nothing. And so yeah, if you are bored and wanting to learn more about tea and listen to a very cute and loving couple chat with one another, then I highly recommend that. But yeah, so I am drinking some homemade kombucha that is cherry and chamomile flavored, and it's delicious. So I'm going to just jump right into the knitting talk, or the crafting talk, because even though I was just here a couple of weeks ago, I have a lot of knitting and sewing to talk to you about. So like I said, I went last weekend to one of my dear friends' wedding, and I wanted to make them a wedding present, and I decided to make I have a couple of other weddings that I'm going to as well, so I decided to sort of batch make a bunch of placemats. And so what I did is I just got a bunch of fat quarters from Fancy Tiger Crafts, and I cut them into strips and made some log cabin type placemats. So this is what they look like. And they are all different. So they all use the same strips of fabric, but in completely unique ways. And it was so fun to put these together. So I'll just kind of go through them really quickly and show them off. I am really obsessed with how they turned out, and I will actually insert some footage of the final product because these are not completely finished. These are a work in progress, but the final product, I was able to finish 4 of them for my dear friend's wedding present. And you can see that the outline of them has the fabric as well. And so that's the only thing that I have to do to finish these up is put that outline fabric on, but I actually ran out of the fabric. And so I need to go get some more, of course, as it happens. And so that is the last thing I really need to do to finish these off, but I'll just show them off. So fun. It was such a blast putting these together. And I feel like it really allowed me to have my creativity shine through. You know, I think something that gets me bogged down with quilting is actually just the tiny little cutting of fabric and piecing things together. But this was so easy because it was just cutting long strips of fabric and then slowly cutting them into shorter strips as I use them up. And I also feel like it allowed me to really use up every last bit of this fabric because I could just work it into the best place. And then I'm actually, all of the scraps I'm gonna keep and make myself some placemats out of the scraps of fabric. So yeah, let me just show these off a little bit more closely. So I essentially cut this central, I'm sorry, I'm trying to be able to show my face because it came to my attention recently. You know, I've been taking care of a lot of people who are unable to speak with their voice and use sign language, and they can all hear. So it's a little bit strange that it's only sort of coming to my attention now, but I also have a couple of patients who are deaf, and it's, you know, very hard for them to be able to interpret what you're saying when your mouth is covered by a mask. And I'm realizing that when I'm showing things off, I'm often covering my face. And so I'm really trying to stop doing that so that if anybody is reading my lips, they can actually see them. So that's why I'm being awkward, is because I am having to relearn how to do things. So anyway, with this, what I did is I started off knitting or cutting out this central block, and then you can see that I just went around in a rectangle and then again and again until it was the size that I wanted. And it ended up being a little bit more square than I wanted, and so the last one is not a log cabin and it's just 2 strips on the end. And then I added a very small strip of this fabric on the outside, which is also what I will use to do the binding, as you've seen. And so I really loved this. I then just quilted it together. So I basted it with my sewing machine using a just very willy-nilly, stitch. And so you can see them sort of coming together in this really, really beautiful way. I am obsessed with these. I really, really love how they turned out, and I'm really proud of them. And actually, my friend has already used them, and so it's been really special to get to see that they have already used them and love them, because I feel like us as crafters, we know how much time and effort gets put into things like this, but when you're giving them away, I feel like I'm always just like, okay, I really want this. So if you don't want it, don't like donate it to Goodwill or feel bad, just like give it back to me, you know, but they love them. So I'm really thrilled. But I love how they turned out, and I think that these could be great Christmas presents. It's a really wonderful small project, especially if you're just wanting to learn how to quilt and you've never done it before. It is a totally doable small project where you can actually see it get finished really quickly, where quilts that I have that are like the size of my bed, I feel like I just never finish because they're just, it's too much. They're too big. So anyway, that is all that I have for sewing content. And so I'm going to move on to the knitting that I've been doing. So I was able to make a purchase with Nutiden yarn, which is a really beautiful yarn purveyor, I don't know, out of Sweden, and they own a mill. So they have sheep and they own a mill, and they do all of the dyeing and all of the processing of the wool at their facility. And this, I got a couple of different yarns from them. So this one, and then you can see these plates up here, which I'll talk about once I start knitting with them, but I just want them there because they're so beautiful that I want to look at them. But this is the yarn that I'll talk about now. This was actually a Patreon only colorway, so I feel a little bit bad showing it off, but this is a really beautiful pink shade that was dyed up, and it is just stunning. It actually really reminds me of rose quartz, the stone, because it's kind of a really light pink that has little bursts of darker pink and gray and white. It reminds me so much of rose quartz. And I knit the Oslo hat by Petite knit out of this. And so this is my final hat. You guys haven't seen this at all. I just cast it on and finished it. And this was such a lovely hat to work on when I was hungover from my wedding. Not my wedding, the wedding I went to. And yeah, this was wonderful. So it's a really, really simple hat where you cast on, and it's essentially just knitting forever. Just stockinette forever with some fancy footwork where you're sort of folding it so that you end up with 3 layers of stockinette around your ears and only 1 layer on top of your head, which I love because I feel like that really allows you to be warm around your ears but have your head a little bit free. So I just wanted to show this. And guys, I kind of saved this hat. So when I first knit it, it was, I think, you know, this yarn is probably slightly thicker than what it actually called for. And so this is all my fault. But when I finished knitting it, it fit well, and then I blocked it and it became humongous. And so then I threw it in the dryer and actually kind of felted it a little bit. And so you can still really see the stitch definition, which I'm kind of surprised by because I had this thing in the dryer for kind of a while. Like I was a little bit scared. But I feel like you can still actually really see the stitch definition. This fabric is this really, really beautiful, really fluffy, hairy fabric. And let me just show it on. It's so warm. So yeah, it is a really beautiful hat. I really love the color. I'm also really happy because when it came out humongous, I was a little bit worried that I was gonna have to give it to my husband, but I wanted it for myself. I really wanted to be selfish and not give it to him. And so I love it. I am gonna wear this so much this winter. I can already tell. I kind of want to knit a million more of them. I honestly want just like a ton of Nutiden hats because they're really warm, really comfortable, and very beautiful. So I'm obsessed. I mean, I love it. I really love it. So anyway, this is my Oslo hat, knit out of Nutiden yarn, and I love their yarn. I feel like it is going to be very hard for me to not log on and buy it every single month. I can't do that, like that'd be ridiculous, but it's just hard because their yarn is one of a kind, you know? And so if you don't buy it then, you're never gonna get it ever. It's not like it will come back. And so I think it's really about watching it, and if there's a color that really calls out to you, you just gotta snatch it up because you'll never get it again. So anyway, I loved knitting this. It was exactly what I wanted. And it's been a while since I've knit something so small and so fast. So it was just a really, really rewarding knit. And the next thing I'll talk about is my Ripple Crop Top by Jessie Designs. I am knitting this out of this Juniper Moon Farm yarn that I showed off a while back, but it is a linen and cotton yarn. It's fingering weight, and I am probably gonna need to buy another ball. I didn't think I would, but I do. I'm almost certain. Anyway, this is the ripple crop top, and I have made a lot of progress on this. So again, this is a very simple, very mindless knit that is an all over rib pattern. So it's a little bit hard to show off. This is the front. And then I am working on knitting up the back. So this is not, you know, that exciting to show off, but I do really like the fabric that I'm getting, and it looks small, but this thing will stretch out like crazy, and I want it to be really oversized. I would like it to be, you know, quite wide and cropped. I really want that sort of boxy cropped look for it. And so I'm just knitting away. I feel like I'm having a very pink moment right now. There's just, everything is pink, and it's bizarre. It's not something that I'm normally drawn to, but for some reason I love pink right now. So I am knitting that, and I'm really enjoying it. I think like I said, will have to buy another ball of the yarn, which is annoying, but it's nothing I can do about it, so. And as you can see, I am keeping this in my project bag, which is a project bag that I kept for myself, and is actually something that I am going to be doing a giveaway for at the end of this episode. So please stay tuned until the end of the episode to learn more about who won some project bags. All right. The last thing that I want to talk about is actually just a whip that I'm wanting to pick up again. This is something that I started several months ago. This is the Forest Berry jacket by Fabel Knitwear. I think it's Helena of Fabel Knitwear. And this is a really beautiful retro-inspired, very tight cardigan that I love, and I am knitting this out of Brooklyn Tweed Loft in the sweatshirt colorway. And I think the reason why I stopped knitting this is actually the fact that you have to cable on the wrong side, which for me is hard because I really try to, I have realized that I really read my knitting, and if I can't see my knitting, then it's hard for me to remember to do things, and it just feels a little bit more tedious. And so the fact that I have to cable on the wrong side is actually the hardest thing about this sweater. And it's not that it's a difficult or challenging thing to do, it's just that each time I have to remember to do it, and so that just makes it a little bit difficult. But I do think that this is a garment that I'm really gonna love, and something simple and classic and very chic, and something that I'll definitely want in my wardrobe. And so I am hoping to pick this up again, but wanted to show it off because it's beautiful, and also because then I may hold myself accountable and actually knit it. All right. So that is all of the current knitting chat that I have. The only other thing that I was hoping to chat about is I was recently watching the Yarn Curator podcast, which is one of my favorites, and she was talking about a Marie Wallin knit along that she is doing with a bunch of other knitters, and I am gonna take part in it. I think it's actually starting tomorrow, so August 1st, and Marie Wallin is this incredible knitwear designer, and I feel like everything that she makes is so intricate and so intense that I've honestly been a little bit intimidated by it. And so I have always wanted to knit something of hers, but have just never gotten around to it because honestly, it just scares the shit out of me because it's like knit on small needles and looks really intricate and looks really crazy, but I feel like it'll be such a fun thing to do as a team, you know, for all of us to knit these sort of complicated Fair Isle or cabled sweaters together. Or you don't have to knit a sweater, I don't think. It's like she has all sorts of stuff that you can knit, but I am going to be knitting the Yell cardigan, which I will put a picture up. And so I actually did some buying of yarn for that cardigan, and I'm hoping to cast it on very shortly. I think that some really beautiful color work is just what I am needing right now. I also think, you know, it's kind of strange. I don't know. I feel a little bit intimidated by steeking. This will also be my first steeked item ever. And I'll be sticking both the armholes and the main front. And so I am just jumping in head first, no questions asked, we're just doing it. And so I will definitely be swatching for that. I just mentioned how I almost never swatch, and that is true, but for something that big and that complicated, I really want it to turn out how I want. And so I will actually be swatching for that. And so hopefully I'll be able to show off my swatch and things like that. Not all the yarn has come in yet, but I wanted to bring that up. And then the other thing I wanted to bring up is, you guys, I am feeling some FOMO. My other favorite knitting podcast is the Jax Knitting podcast. And I just love it so much because I just love their female friendship. It's just so beautiful. And I feel like they allow us to kind of like take part in it and be, you know, part of the friendship, which is so fun, especially for me because I have a few friends who like enjoy knitting kind of, or like knit a little bit, but I don't have any friends who knit like I knit, except for all of you guys. And it's just so fun to be able to see people who love knitting talk about knitting, because I feel like it's not something that I really get to talk about as much as I want to, which is part of the reason why I started this. But it's, anyway, it's hard because I'm having like a lot of cognitive dissonance about this, but I just found out that I actually will have weekends off during October, and I have never been to Ravelry. I don't even think I would ever be able to go to Ravelry, to the New York Sheep and Wool Festival, but I want to go so badly. I think now it's like, I had this moment where I was like, oh wait, I have weekends off in October. Like I could totally go to Rhinebeck. I can do it. But I think it's something where like, if you did not make reservations like a year and a half ago, like there's no way that you're gonna be able to go. And I also think for me, you know, I wanna go to Rhinebeck to be able to be around all of these beautiful knitters, but I think it would be a little bit strange to be like alone and then like go there. And I just don't really have any friends who I think would want to go with me, and so I don't know. If anybody out there has a open bedroom or open couch and would want to welcome me into their little Rhinebeck party, please let me know. But yeah, I am kind of wanting to knit the half and half triangles wrap because it looks so fun. And I just knit this thing in stockinette where you're just knitting stockinette forever. And I found it to be so soothing. And I kind of want a yellow on yellow, like one light color yellow, one dark color yellow, half and half triangles wrap, because I think it would be beautiful. So anyway, that's percolating in my brain, because I'm having FOMO and I think it would be beautiful, and I want to try this linen quill yarn, and I just think it would be fun to be able to be part of the crew. But anyway, that is all of the crafting talk I have to chat about today. And so I'm actually going to move on to talking a little bit more about the amazing books that I have been reading over the last couple of weeks. All right. So I have been doing quite a bit of reading over the last couple of weeks. So in this time, I have finished 7 books, which is kind of crazy. During my overnights, you know, you're kind of having to be awake, and so I end up reading quite a bit during my overnights just to sort of keep me awake and keep me engaged in the task at hand. Which is like making sure that children don't die overnight. Anyway, so I read a lot of books and thought that I would just kind of go through them relatively quickly again. And so the first book that I wanted to talk about, I think I'll do them in like more or less like worst to best order, because that just makes the most sense for me. And so the first book that I'll talk about is The Plot. This was a thriller that I believe I had just started reading when I last talked with you guys, and so, or you all, and so that book is a thriller book about a man who is teaching at a small liberal arts college. He's teaching creative writing, and he has this pupil who comes in, and is kind of pompous, and he says, you know, I don't really care about this class. I like more than anything just like want to take it to kind of learn a little bit, but truthfully, I have the best plot that you could possibly imagine, and it is a plot to end all plots, and so I don't really need you. But then he dies, and before he dies, he tells his professor what the plot of the story is, and it is truly astounding. And the professor of the creative writing class steals his plot and writes the book. And it is about the professor and kind of what happens after he does that. So that all happens very, very early on in the book. This is not me like spoiling the plot for you. And it was kind of a wild ride. I will say, I think I gave it like 3 out of 4 or 3 out of 5. It was still a pretty good thriller. That's pretty high for me for thrillers. That means that I liked it quite a bit. It's like rare for me. I think I just don't like thrillers as much as I want to like them. Like I think I end up not loving them as much as I anticipate. But yeah, it was really fun. It was really engaging. There were plot twists. I did figure out what was happening, and I did figure out the plot twist relatively early on. But I think that it was subtle enough. You know, I think that it was kind of rewarding that I figured it out, and at the end I was like, I knew it, which was actually pretty fun, where I feel like sometimes you're like, oh, dang it. You know, this was actually like, yes, I figured it out. And honestly, I have read so many thrillers by now that I think it's kind of, I don't know, I don't want to say the genre is being like ruined for me, but I'm just saying that I have read so many of them that now I feel like I can kind of see where the author's going and what kind of like little clues they're laying for me. But yeah, so that was a good solid 3 out of 5. It was really fun and pretty enjoyable. So if that sounds at all appealing, please check it out. The next book I read is The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. And this was another like 3 out of 5. I would say this was a historical fiction. I think they call it fantasy, but there's like nothing fantastical about this. I don't think. Like it's, I guess maybe they're kind of witches, but they're not really, I don't know. Anyway, this is a story about a woman who is walking along the river in London, and she sees a small vial that has a bear on it. And she just becomes really interested in that, particularly because she's going through some sort of like upheaval in her personal life. And so she just wants to research something and figure something out, and she's always dreamed of being a historian. And so for her, she's kind of using this as a way of finding herself. And so she learns about this vial and where it comes from, and what it actually comes from is a woman who is an apothecary in the olden days. I don't actually remember when. I think it's in the 1700s at some point, but let's see. Probably says 1791. She is an apothecary, but she makes tinctures that are poisons to kill the men in women's lives who are doing bad things to them. And it was fun. It was interesting. I do think that it could have been longer and slightly more beautiful. I don't know. There was just like something about it that was not as memorable as I wanted it to be. And I also felt like one of the main, like, I don't want to give too much of it away, but like one of the main reasons why you're kind of worried that the apothecary will be found out and like tried for what she's been doing, for essentially murdering a bunch of people. Her reason for like not hiding the names of all of the women that she's made these poisons for doesn't really check out to me and just seems strange. And so I think for me it was like hard to get behind this, like, well, why couldn't you just like destroy the ledger like this, you know? Anyway, so this was really interesting, but and like fun and feminist, and it was an enjoyable ride, but I would say it was like a 3 out of 5. It was just like, it was good, but it wasn't like anything that I will remember and like really think about very much after reading it. The next book I read, I'm realizing that they're not set up in best to worst order, and so I'm actually just gonna talk about them in this order. Because this next book was like a 4 to 5 out of 5. was obsessed with this. So this is Severance by Ling Ma. Okay, this may be a little bit too close to home to read this book right now after a pandemic, because it is about a fungal pandemic that makes people fevered and then they die, like they kind of like become zombies essentially, and it's about the world ending. And so that was, you know, a little spooky. And then something that happened the night after I finished reading this book is we like lost power randomly, where I feel like normally when we lose power, it's like there's a storm. And so of course the power goes out because like a branch fell down, but this was just like kind of out of nowhere. And I was like, it's the end of the world. Yeah, anyway. So this is Severance by Ling Ma, and this follows a woman named Candace Chen, who is living in New York City, and she is working for this like Bible manufacturer company. And she's just kind of like working her mundane life, living her mundane life. And it kind of goes back and forth between her life before this all happened and then her life after the sort of pandemic happened. And so it's very similar to Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel, if you've ever read that, but I think this is better, dare I say. And so it goes back and forth, and sort of every other chapter is kind of going back and forth until you're kind of coming together. And it is so fascinating to kind of watch the pandemic happen slowly, and people like kind of at first not think it's a big deal, and then all of a sudden be like, oh, and have things like spiral and get worse and worse, and see her go through that from the original aspect, and then at the end see kind of what life is like after. And it is a wild ride. It is like mundane and beautiful and fast-paced and scary, and oh, it is so good. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I think 5 out of 5, like, this was incredible. I highly, highly recommend it. It's definitely like not for the faint of heart though. Like there is some stuff that goes down, and it's just written in this like eerily familiar way that it's sometimes hard to read, but oh my gosh, it was incredible. I really loved it. I cannot wait to read everything that she writes. I mean, it's crazy. I think it was her debut too. Like that's the thing that's even more crazy to me. I will say, like, I love apocalypse stories. I don't know why. I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm already seeing a doctor. I'm already on meds. But anyway, the next book I will talk about, just so we can briefly discuss it, is I did finish a reread of Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince by She Who Must Not Be Named. And this is the 6th book in the Harry Potter series and is actually my favorite. And there's so many things that I want to say about this, but I just don't want to give the person who wrote this any more screen time than this, but to say that I really adore these books. I really, really love the world that was created in these books, and they bring me a lot of joy and a lot of solace and a lot of comfort. And so I often do still turn to them when I am needing comfort, and I am so saddened by the fact that they do not provide comfort to large portions of our population. So do not support the author, but do still love this world that she created that taught me to love reading as I was growing up. The next book that I will talk about is, let's do this one actually. This was so fun too, oh my God. This is My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. So something that this is very minor, okay, but the fact that I can't find the author's name on the front of this is crazy. He does have his name here, Hendrix, and I think it says Grady Hendrix tiny in the back here, but I don't know. I thought that was like kind of cool. Like writing is an art, and so I want artists to be able to put their name on things because I do think that's really important. But for some reason I was like, okay, Grady Hendrix, I see you. Like, you don't even need to put your name on it. Anyway, this is a super fun, super kitschy, super dark, like it got really dark story about a teenage girl in the 80s who gets possessed. and it's about her friends and her navigating the fact that she's possessed. And it's so good. I don't want to tell you anything else because I think going into it, just knowing that that's what it's about and knowing that it's going to be creepy, it's a horror book, obviously, so it's going to be scary, but it was such a fun, wild ride. I adored it. I like really loved it. I do love horror. This is a genre that I enjoy, and I think Grady Hendrix does a great job. I also think, and this is kind of surprising to me, it shouldn't be, because I do think that female friendships are something that people can experience even if it's not two women. Like I have many, many beautiful friendships with men, but I am always kind of surprised when a man writes a really good description of a female friendship, particularly in this like middle school, high school time, because it's a very particular thing. And I think that I've read stories by men who write about female friendships, and it's very clear that they have not done their research and that they don't know what it means to be in a female friendship. But this one, like, it was great. I was impressed. So yeah, if you want to read something dark but fun, I highly recommend My Best Friend's Exorcism. One thing I will say is definitely check out the trigger warnings for this because there are a lot. I think that sometimes goes without saying because it is a horror book, and so it's horrifying. And so if you have trigger warnings that you really don't want to experience alarmingly, then I think you should read those for this because it's a horror book. So anyway, the next book I'll talk about was actually a reread for me, and I also gave this like 4 or 5 out of 5. I love this romance novel. This is Beach Read by Emily Henry. I think the thing that I love about this so much is actually that Emily Henry did a really good job talking about grief and love and this like hate to love / friends to lovers romance. It was wonderful. So Beach Read follows this woman named January and her college rival Gus. And so essentially what happens is January's father dies and she realizes that her father has a beach house, a lake house on the lake of, on the beach of Lake Michigan. And he had this house with his lover, and she goes to the house and is packing it up and dealing with the grief of her father's loss and also the loss of the father that she thought she had, and realizing that he was someone different and more complex. And it is about her going through the grief of that loss while also coming to the realization that her next door neighbor happens to be her rival writing partner from college. And so it's their hate to love romance. It's beautiful, it's wonderful, it's so fun. I loved it. I really loved it. It's so good and it's really wonderfully written. Like, I love Emily Henry. I also really loved her new book that she just came out with. I think this one is better though. I really do. So yeah, Beach Read by Emily Henry. So good. Loved it. And then the last book that I have finished reading in the last couple weeks is Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. I actually forgot to talk about this during my last podcast. So this is actually from a couple of weeks ago. This is awesome. This is a, it's incredible. I like don't even, please read this. It's so good. It's so good. I like don't want to give anything away. And so it's like hard for me to talk about it because I do think like going into it not knowing that much is helpful. And so I'm actually going to read the inside title or the inside page because I don't want to give too much away. It's so good. Yadriel has summoned a ghost, and now he can't get rid of him. When his traditional Latinx family has problems accepting his gender, Yadriel becomes determined to prove himself a real brujo. With the help of his cousin and best friend Maritza, he performs the quinces ritual himself and then sets out to find the ghost of his murdered cousin, Miguel, and set it free. However, the ghost he summons is actually Julian Diaz, the school's resident bad boy, and Julian is not about to go quietly into death. He's determined to find out what happened and tie up some loose ends before he leaves. Left with no choice, Yadriel agrees to help Julian so that they can both get what they want. But the longer Yadriel spends with Julian, the less he wants him to leave. It's so good. Oh my God. It's just got such good rep, you know, like, I don't know. I feel like I am just like held up a book by like a transphobic author, and that really sucks. But this is like the opposite of that. This is like trans joy. This is just a beautiful description of friendship and families like fucking it up and getting things wrong and dead-naming you and using the wrong pronouns, but then like growing and learning and changing, and oh my God, it's so good. It's also just like fun friendships and like fun twists and turns. It's definitely YA, so it's not like the most breathtakingly written story because it's written for a younger audience, and so the language itself is not meant to be like flowery, you know, it's meant to be something that you can connect with, and I connected with it so deeply. I really loved it. I actually one of my family members just came out as trans, and so I really want to give this book to them, and so I don't know if I will still have it next time I see you, because I'm going to be seeing them this weekend, and so I might give this book away. Even though I want to keep it for myself, I do think that for them it could be a really beautiful thing that they get to read and see themselves in paper, you know. I think that's really important. It's really important and really powerful. So anyway, this is Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. It was wonderful. If you have any trans youth in your community, or if you just want to learn more about what it means to be trans, then I highly recommend picking this up or buying it for someone you love. So those are all of the books that I have finished reading recently, and then I just have 2 books that I am currently reading. So the first is Survive the Night by Riley Sager. This is a thriller. I'm about halfway through, and it is essentially about a woman who sees movies in her mind and thinks she might be in a car with a serial killer. And I don't want to say anything more because, yeah, it's interesting. I don't know where it's going. It's not my favorite. I just read Home Before Dark by him, and I really loved that because I really love like haunted house kind of tropes. But so far it's interesting. I don't know. I love serial killer stuff. I think serial killers are fascinating. So I know I'm sick. And then I am about 400 pages into The Wise Man's Fear by Patrick Rothfuss. I was reading this way too quickly. I was reading it like 100 pages a day, and I actually made myself slow down, and I am really thankful for that because I love this story, and I want to savor it as much as I can because I don't think we'll ever get the 3rd one. So yeah, still really enjoying this. I'm actually already planning my next tattoo, which I think I'm going to be getting right here, which will be The Wise Man's Fear and The Name of the Wind inspired. So I'm excited about that. So maybe next time you see me, I'll have a tattoo on my arm, but hopefully it won't be that long. I'm not getting it till the end of August. So, yeah, that is all that I have to chat with you today. Stay tuned, and I will be drawing the winners for the project bags. So hello, this is Editing Maggie, and I decided to wait until the last possible minute in order to draw the winners for this giveaway. So I have all of the winners here, and I'll just read off your names. Please reach out to me on either Ravelry or Instagram and let me know that you're the winner and give me your address so that I can get your packages in the mail to you. So the first winner is Eryse White, who recommended Ender's Game, the classic Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. The next is Aleeza Stevens, who recommended a nonfiction, Behave by Robert Sapolsky. Sorry, there is a motorcycle going by. That was Behave by Robert Sapolsky. And the last winner is Ms. Farmer, who recommended 2 books. The first is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, which I read earlier this year and loved, as well as The Last Werewolf by Glenn Duncan. So if you are Eryse, Aleeza, or Ms. Farmer, please reach out to me so that I can get your packages in the mail to you. I just wanted to say thank you so much to everyone for being here and for sending so much love and joy and so many book recommendations. It means so much to me. Like I said, I don't have a community really in the crafting world, and so it means a lot to me to be able to connect with people and share my joy and my passion with all of you. So thank you for being here. Keep taking care of each other, and I will see you soon. Bye.